Hey, Bobby, look, I'm American.
I think I'll use my credit card. Do you guys have anything non-dairy? Anything gluten-free?
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back. I'm at the Waddy's channel. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. I'm going to assume that this guy in the opening clip here is a non-naturalized citizen. Here's the thing, man. I lived in freaking Texas for 13 damn years, and this guy does a better Southern accent than I could ever dream of. Of course, you basically got to be born and raised in a certain area to kind of have the vocals, either the speech or the slang or whatever or whatnot from a certain area. So, like, if I was born in Boston or New York City, I'm gonna have my accent's gonna be based on how you would talk in like New Jersey and New York and or Massachusetts, Rhode Island, places like that, right? So it's gonna be a lot different than how you would talk in somewhere like South Dakota or something. But so when I went to Texas, I was really hoping to kind of get like a Southern accent, but it just never happened. Of course, when I lived in Texas, I lived in Central Texas. I lived in Killeen, and Killeen is 40,000 plus soldiers from all over the United States. So, and all of the families in the surrounding area of Killeen, Harker Heights, Coppers Cove. So, you're not you're not in the heart of Texas. Where you when I kind of got to Texas, I was expecting everybody to be walking around with like cowboy hats and a pistol strapped to their waist and everything. And just Texas was not what I was expecting. Let's just put it that way. But like I said, man, this guy did a whole lot better job with that accent than I could. So that's pretty awesome. Today's video, guys, this comes up all the time. Anytime I get on like YouTube or Facebook or something, I don't know, man. I started using Facebook more often than not, and I've never used Facebook before, but now all of a sudden, these last couple months, I've started to enjoy it. Little funny pictures, and that's where I got a lot of my memes from. And TikTok, I've started using that more often now. If I feel like all my feeds and all of my recommendations are all these clips that irritate the crap out of me. Racist comments, like people opening up videos like, "Hey, white people," like what the hell? Like right off the bat, half a second into the video, I'm already angry. So I get a lot of these stupid ass racist remarks, comments and stuff, a bunch of hatred, blaming me for slavery and shit like that. I'm like, dude, you're blaming me for something that happened 150, 160 damn years ago. Come on now, get over yourself. So I found a bunch of clips that I kind of feel like make some really solid points, and I want to incorporate that into this video because I want to try and educate some people. And there's going to be a couple clips from Candace Owens. If you do not know who Candace Owens is, she is what a lot of people think Kamala Harris is, and Kamala Harris is a freaking joke. And there was one girl that said if someone like Candace Owens runs for presidency in 2028, that she would vote for her. I'm like, hell freaking yeah. Candace Owens. I freaking love Candace Owens, okay? I know Candace Owens is married, probably has a couple kids or whatnot by now, probably has a beautiful family, but I am a huge Candace Owens fan. Absolutely love her to death. Amazing. Brilliant mind, well-spoken, brilliant, great politics. She talks about things that actually matter. And she looks at it not with blinders on, but she looks at it from a rational standpoint. She looks at things objectively, and that's why I love listening to what she has, or I love listening to what she has to say. And if she ever did run for presidency, one of the first things I'd ever want to get rid of is the whole notion that presidents can only run for 2 terms. If Candace Owens was ever president, I'd want her to run until she says, I don't want to be president anymore. And I know why they did that right after FDR. because America, they don't want the presidency to be a monarchy. They don't want it to be treated like kings and queens, right? So that's why they wanted kind of give that separation, no more than 2 terms type of deal. But Candace Owens is fantastic, so I would not mind seeing her as president for several terms. So there were a couple of clips that she had I want to incorporate in this video, and one of them would talk about slavery, and I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Fantastic history lesson. I think this will open up some minds for a lot of people that they may not have been aware of before. And I'm going to incorporate some additional things as well. What else do I want to say about this? I'm going to try and find some things, make this a little bit fun, longer, more of a fun video for you guys. But all in all, hopefully you guys will enjoy this video, and let's move on from there.
So when did slavery end in the United States?
Great question. It began to end in 1777, a process of decoupling from an ancestral evil where we have more people in the world right now that are slaves today than back then. The process began 1820s. The debate reignites because of John C. Calhoun, the creation of the cotton gin. We fight a war over it. We win the war and slavery is abolished. That's a pretty awesome track record for a country that inherited an evil that every other country prior to it had. It was the West that got rid of slavery. It was William Wilberforce. It was John Edwards. It was George Whitefield. It's easy to kind of do your thing like, well, it's terrible, it's bad. Yes, it's easy to call balls and strikes on a society you didn't create. It's easy to try to lecture the rest of the country. Be like, you know, these people are so terrible for something you didn't toil for or sacrifice for. Have an ounce of gratitude for what these people created and the country you get to live in.
You cannot bring people into the country that don't share your values and still be a country. You could be something else, you just won't be a country.
How do you think this country was? A lot of people. This country was made by people coming from different places.
Good point. So were we made by settlers or immigrants?
Made by. What's the difference?
Think about it. Ever asked that question before? It's okay, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but there's a huge difference. A settler does what? Starts something new. An immigrant comes to something already built. Which one started America?
Settlers did.
So we're not a nation of immigrants, we're a nation of settlers. And yes, we have used immigration as a tool to enrich the American experiment because a lot of people assimilated. The Irish did, the Polish did, the Italians did, the Germans did. We are now losing assimilation as a primary prerequisite. And that doesn't mean you're a bad person, it just means that you're losing what a country is, which is borders, language, culture, amongst other things. That's not it.
You know, Charlie Kirk, he makes a awesome point right there. And I myself make the same mistake of referring to the United States as a nation of immigrants. And Charlie Kirk, he just basically hit it on the head. He just described it beautifully. And I have to correct myself because as he describes, we are not necessarily a nation of immigrants. Because when you think about it, the so-called United States of America wasn't built by immigrants. It was built by settlers. Settlers are just that. There are people that settle in a new area. They lay down roots, literally. They lay down agriculture. They lay down they create buildings and infrastructure and whatnot. They create. And immigrants are moving into an area that's already populated, an area that's already been built up and established. So when you look at the Polish or the Irish or what have you, anyone that's basically coming through New York in the 1890s, 1900s, etc., and you're seeing this whole influx of immigration in the 19th century, early 20th century. It's all immigrants that are coming over to the United States because they're looking for better lives, right? So that makes a whole lot of sense. And so I myself, when I always refer to the United States, when I say that we are a nation of immigrants, it's actually incorrect. So I really like that explanation that he provides.
Disney, of course, has gone down the drain. Everything that we grew up with has been ruined because there's just an agenda. Well, now they're bringing back that Proud Family Kids series, and they are pushing reparations, claiming that the United States was founded on white supremacy. So let's just watch this little clip as much as we can possibly stomach on this Monday morning. at least. And let's hear what the Proud family has to say about reparations. Take a listen.
This country was built on slavery, which means slaves built this country.
Tilled this land from sea to sea to sea. First there was rice, tobacco, sugar cane. Then Whitney did his thing and cotton became king.
And we were its soldiers,
4 million strong.
fighting for America's freedoms, even though we remained America's
Slaves built this country. The descendants of slaves continue to build this.
Slaves built this country. And we, the descendants of slaves in America, have earned reparations for their suffering.
And continue to earn reparations every moment we spend submerged in the systemic prejudice, racism, and
white supremacy
that America was founded with and still has not atoned for.
Slaves built this country. Not only field hands, but carpenters, masons,
blacksmiths, musicians, inventors built cities from Jamestown to New Orleans to Banneker,
Washington. 40 acres and a mule.
We'll take the 40 acres, keep the mule.
We made your families rich.
From the southern plantation heirs
to the northern
bankers
to the New England
history of slavery. By saying that the majority of people did not have slaves. Obviously, a very small fraction of uber wealthy people had slaves. People that were fighting the Civil War, it was a poor man's fight and a rich man's war. They were not fighting to keep slavery in place. They didn't have slaves, right? There was other components of the Civil War. People don't like to talk about that. Well, I'm going to say something else that's going to offend people because it's true, right? The idea that this country and the success that this country had is because slaves built this country. History betrays this narrative, okay? Let me first say, obviously, we all know slavery was abhorrent. It was an abhorrent practice all over the world. It did not begin in America. And actually, it did not begin with white people, right? It still goes on today, and it is black and brown people that keep those institutions up. And actually, white people were the first people to end the institutions of slavery. France, the United Kingdom, followed by America. We were the first to put an end and to abolish slavery. So there's no question that it was an abhorrent practice. There's no question that it leaves a stain on all of the histories around the world, right? Forget just American history. All around the world, it leaves a stain. But the idea that America was built because of slaves is so foolish. There is a reason why when the Civil War ended and when slavery was abolished, America was thrust into the Industrial Revolution. Because in the absence of using slaves, they had to come up with something else, and that something else was machines. And people were able to work faster and able to work smarter. In fact, prolonging slavery actually slowed progress down. Are you offended? Are you offended by the truth? I want you to be super offended by the fact that human hands cannot do what machines can do.
Nice. See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. She gives these brilliant, rational explanations. She is so clever and she's so well-spoken. The Industrial Revolution and how it began post the end of slavery, it makes a lot of sense. And progression only happened after. I wouldn't have really put that together. It makes sense. I mean, now that I think about it, 100% facts. But a lot of people, they're going to watch this and there are certain things in life that you're going to feel a certain way about. And no matter what another person says, you're going to hold on to those values one way or another. I could sit here and say, hey, abortion is bad. You can sit there and tell me 10 million things why abortion is good. I could sit there and say, you know what? I agree with every single one of your 10 million reasons why abortion is good. I still believe abortion is a bad thing and should be stripped. Let the baby be born. But that's a different story, right? But sitting there and kind of blaming one ethnic group in general, when that particular ethnic group wasn't even the first people to start slavery. And in all, it wasn't even that. It wasn't like white people went in and started just kidnapping random people and enslaved them, you know? Call it an auction if you want, but it was, you go to India, you go to Syria, you go to China, you go to these different places, it's their own people selling people off. It's horrible, but that's what was happening. People were essentially property. And you go back to Roman times, do you think gladiators were free men? No, they were slaves. They belonged to their slave owners, or what were they called? They had particular names. I forget what they're called, but I really love that explanation. And as she explains the progression from slavery, from having the hands that actually did the work to the movement to machines, and how much better has life gotten with the invention of machinery. So, coffee, the creation of coffee machines. If a person had to sit there and actually grind coffee beans by hand, how much longer would that take to brew a single cup of coffee, as opposed to making an entire pot of coffee, which takes a matter of minutes through a machine, right? So I'm really interested in furthering hearing more what she has to say. So I am going to go back to the video.
And so what happened was when they started realizing that we cannot use human beings, we had to come up with machines. They began coming up with all types of machines. And the people that built America were those that were able to come up with those machines, which thrust us into the Industrial Revolution. So
very interesting. So there is one more video clip I want to insert. Again, it is another Candace Owens video where she kind of did a breakdown of the history of slavery, and I thought it was remarkable. And I really wish something like this would have existed 30 plus years ago when I was in elementary school and whatnot, because this is brilliant. And I think kids today, if this is what is actually being taught in school, you wouldn't have this idiotic notion that the United States of America were the inventors or the creators of slavery or whatnot, or that we as Americans are the people that kidnapped children and separated moms and dads from their kids and kidnapped or abducted adults, strong adults, and brought them to a foreign nation and made them do slave labor, tend to the fields and whatnot. And what's the stupid stuff I heard recently? The term MF, because slave masters made sons F their mothers. I'm like, stupid stuff, man. There is no records whatsoever to say that was ever a thing, or how good morning is supposed to be. No, it's morning time. It's a good morning. There's no morning with a U talking about sadness. And I don't know why people think some shit like that isn't. It's just people make up stories, and then other people hear these stories, and then they take it as fact and think it's actually a thing. And then they just make themselves look like idiots. So, but this last clip, I'm going to say my goodbye right now, guys. I'm going to leave you with this last clip, which it's a real fun video. Hopefully you guys enjoy it and kind of learn something as well. And hopefully be able to pass it on to some others who give them a little bit better of an education. So thank you for watching, and until next time. Goodbye, everybody.
And now for a brief history of slavery. Here's the first thing you need to know. Slavery was not invented by white people. It did not start in 1619 when the first slaves came to Jamestown. It existed before then. It did not start in 1492 when Columbus discovered the New World. In fact, when the intrepid explorer landed in the Bahamas, the native Taino tribe hoped that he would help them defeat their aggressive neighbors, the Caribs. The Caribs enslaved the Taino and, on occasion, served them for dinner. Slavery existed in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. The word slave actually comes from the Slavs of Eastern Europe. Millions of them, all white by the way, were captured and enslaved by Muslims in the 9th century and later by the Ottoman Turks.
Slavery existed when the Roman Empire controlled the Mediterranean and most of Europe from the 1st through the 5th centuries. Slavery existed when Alexander the Great conquered Persia in the 4th century BC. It was so common that Aristotle simply considered it natural. The slave-master model was just how the world operated in the great philosopher's day. Slavery existed during the time of the ancient Egyptians 5,000 years ago. As far back as we can go in human history, we find slavery. As renowned historian John Steele Gordon notes from time immemorial, slaves were a major item of commerce. As much as a third of the population of the ancient world was enslaved. Here's the second thing you need to know. White people were the first to formally put an end to slavery. In 1833, Britain was the first country in the history of the world to pass a Slavery Abolition Act. They were quickly followed by France, who in 1848 abolished slavery in her many colonies. Then, of course, came the 13th Amendment in the United States Constitution. After centuries of human slavery, white men led the world in putting an end to the abhorrent practice. That includes the 300,000 Union soldiers, overwhelmingly white, who died during the Civil War. Now, am I saying that this makes white people better than anyone else? Of course not. My purpose here is to simply tell the truth, and the truth is that human history is complicated. No one, regardless of skin color, stands guiltless. Yet today we are never told to consider the murderous Persian Empire or the cannibalism of indigenous tribes of North and South America or the heinous actions under the imperialistic Muslim, Chinese, Mongol, or Japanese empires, to name just a few. Instead, we're told that slavery is a white phenomenon. And like all persistent lies, this lie spawns a bunch of other lies. On social media, I come across extraordinary depictions about how Africans lived like pharaohs before Europeans came and laid waste to their paradise. I wish any of this were true, but it's not. It's a fantasy. The truth is that Africans were sold into slavery by other Black Africans, and in many cases, sold for items as trivial as gin and mirrors. Whites didn't go into the interior and round up the natives. They waited on the coast for their Black partners to bring them Black bodies. The stark reality is that our lives had very little value to our ancestors. Here's the third thing you need to know. If you think slavery is a relic of the past, you're wrong. There are some 700,000 slaves in Africa today, right now. That's the lowest estimate that I could find. Other sources say there are many more. For context, that's almost twice as many slaves as were ever brought to the United States. Child soldiers, human trafficking, forced labor, these are the conditions that currently exist within the same sub-Saharan region where the transatlantic slave trade originated. African bodies are being sold today like they were sold then, and no, they are not being purchased by any country of white men. In fact, slavery, by any traditional definition, is exclusively practiced today within non-white countries. But we hear almost nothing about that. Just like we hear nothing about how slavery was universal until good people in Europe and America ended it 2 centuries ago. Why? Because our so-called leaders, Black and white, wouldn't profit from it. Black victimhood is nothing if not profitable. It elects politicians and funds racial grievance groups. And if Black Americans began to view themselves as partners in the American dream, if we embraced the patriotic spirit that holds all men are created equal, the patriotic spirit that is our real heritage, then the race hustlers would soon be out of business. And who wants that? I'm Candace Owens, author of Blackout for Prager University. Thank you for watching this video. To keep PragerU videos free, please consider making a tax-deductible donation.